This is Energy Perspectives, a weekly podcast produced in Guyana that delves into the developments unfolding in the world's fastest growing economy.
Hi there. Welcome to this week's episode of the Energy Perspectives podcast. I am your hostess, a CEO of the Guyana Energy Conference and Supply Chain Expo, Kiana Wilberg. Today, our focus will be on energy and environmental sustainability. It is my honor to have with us a really distinguished and important guest. He is the former president of Colombia, Mr. Iván Duque. Mr. President, thank you so much for being here.
Kiana, it's a great honor for me to be here in this podcast. And also, I want to congratulate you for organizing and leading one of the most important energy conferences in this hemisphere. So it's really an honor for me to be here.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I want to jump right in, starting with perhaps on a personal note. During your time in office from 2018 to 2022, you were then and still are regarded as one of the most passionate defenders of environmental sustainability. What inspired you to make this subject the cornerstone of your presidency and the legacy you're now leading?
Well, first of all, I grew up in a family where the environment was a substantial part of the conversation. When I was very young, my father used to head the Bogota Water and Sanitation Company. So he took me to the high altitude ecosystems that we call páramos with my mother, and they both taught me the importance of nature to preserve water and the water cycles. And I remember they showed me this marvelous tree that we have in Colombia called the frailejón, which is a very unique species of a tree that regulates all the water that flows in and out within those high altitude ecosystems. So I grew up in that environment, and always in my life, we had at a family level a conscience of conservation. We had the practice of recycle, reducing, reusing. We had also substantial conversations about the richness that Colombia has. So I would say that has been with me all my life. And during all my professional life, I've been involved with the environment. And that's when I took office. I said, we want to make Colombia one of the leaders globally in terms of environmental policy making. So that's why we reached 30% protected areas in 2022, 8 years before the deadline. That's why we push hard for the energy matrix transformation and accelerated the energy transition with non-conventional renewable energies. That's why we launched the circular economy policy. That's why we protected more than 1 million corals. And that's also why we decided that the private sector, the public sector, and civil society should participate in putting together a climate action bill. And we became one of the leaders in terms of decarbonization in the region. So all that is something that I've taken to heart. And since I left the presidency, I'm taking all these subjects to a global scale. Not only my affiliations with Conservation International, WRI, the Best Research Fund, but also in some of the boards that I serve and in the faculties where I teach. So having this consciousness about the environment, not thinking of it as maybe a passive side, but instead understanding that the environment is an asset and that we shall protect that asset is something that has inspired me to read my latest book called Our Planet. So Our Future. It's called Our Future, a Green Manifesto for Latin America and the Caribbean. So Our Future, it's the clear definition of 14 strategies that were able to be used in Colombia, including the green taxonomy, and being able to put together all this transformation. And now I want to take it at a global scale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, you have, in addition to your significant work in promoting sustainable development in Colombia, a special relationship with Guyana. You've participated in the Guyana Energy Conference. You have a special relationship as well with the president of Guyana, Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali. And it's clear that there are some characteristics about this country that truly draw you. But I'd love to hear from you.
Well,
what do you find?
I am a lover of this country. I just believe Guyana is full of majestic places, its people, its history, its environment, and I see Guyana from different lenses. But I have to say that Guyana, it's a superpower of biodiversity. It's a superpower of conservation. More than 90% of this country's tropical forest. I value that this country has a low carbon development strategy for more than a decade. So it was not adopted because it was the flavor of the month, but because instead there's an structural way of thinking in alignment with the environment. I'm also in love with the fact that this is one of the countries in South America with the largest amount of land in the hands of indigenous communities with due titles. And I also admire the idea that although this country has this great boom of oil and gas, is using that boom of oil and gas to facilitate the social transition, and at the same time being able to create a much more diversified energy matrix. So yeah, there are things that inspire me about Guyana. And I think the whole world should know more about this country, not only in terms of energy security, because it's the largest per capita producer of oil in the planet, but also because the right balance of all this is that Guyana is a conservation superpower that has been able to protect its land, its nature, and has been able to involve the whole community in that purpose.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, you noted the low carbon development strategy and how that is providing a blueprint for instructional thinking on saving and protecting our flora and fauna, our biodiversity, and the wealth in that. But there are also some new initiatives that we've seen being led by the current administration, one being the launch of the Global Biodiversity Alliance, which is expected to see its full launch next year. What are your thoughts on this particular initiative?
First of all, let me begin by saying that I consider that President Ali has become one of the strongest voices globally in defense of biodiversity. People don't acknowledge in the planet that we have lost almost 70% of the world wildlife in the last 5 decades. And if this trend continues, we'll be destroying one of our most valuable assets, which is that nature and that biodiversity that enhances the circle of life. So looking at a president that is highly committed to conservation, that is highly committed to social transformation, that is highly committed to economic transformation, based on this, I have to say that maybe the most important thing that people can realize about this country is that a global biodiversity alliance led by Guyana can put the voice of the global south before the eyes of the global north with very practical instruments to be defined. For example, debt swaps on biodiversity conservation, guarantees for biodiversity conservation projects and bonds, having green taxonomies with an emphasis in biodiversity protection that can allow the markets to buy some of its sovereign debt connected to budgetary expenses aimed for conservation. And I would say being able to duplicate the protected areas just in the course of the next year. So a global biodiversity alliance means that countries should align in the way they deploy the capital to protect nature, but with the smart finance that are required in order to make this attractive for worldwide investors.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, the President is also, President Tiffany is also leading a 30 by 30, a very important 30 by 30 plan. Can you also tell us a bit more on that and your thoughts on its importance to the charge on protecting our environment?
I said previously that we have lost almost 70% of the world wildlife in the last 5 decades. I've also said that due to land degradation, deforestation, and negative use of land, we have lost in the Amazon, almost the size of Germany and France together in the last 4 decades. But also, we have seen that the deterioration in the way that we use land is affecting aquifers, is affecting the supply of fresh water. So if we don't understand that this is serious stuff, if we don't understand the challenges that we face, it's going to be difficult to be successful in environmental policies. And that's where the 30 by 30 becomes a priority. If we get all the countries in the world at least to protect 30% of its territory, which means to be declared a protected area, I think we would definitely be winners in the way we adapt to the consequences of climate change. So that's why 30 by 30 is important. It's also important in the maritime areas because we're eating the life in the sea, in the ocean. And having no-take areas allows species to survive, to have an uninterrupted cycle of life, which allows also to have fishing, but have it in a sustainable way. So getting to 30% declared protected areas by the countries in the world means the most visible and impactful indicator connected to conservation. So that's why when people tend to talk more about carbon neutrality, I say no, it's carbon neutrality plus nature positive. And you can't be nature positive without, at minimum, contributing to declare 30% of your territory a protected area.
Wow, that is fascinating indeed. And thank you for that insight. To close our program, Mr. President, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Guyana's plans and its pursuit of oil and gas exploration and development alongside its aggressive environmental protection plans.
The thing, Kiana, is that we can't see this just as an oil and gas policy. The way I describe what Guyana is doing is it's using the richness of the underground to eradicate the poverty on the ground. So that's why you need the oil and gas resources, and you need to invest it in a smart, sustainable, scalable, and replicable way so that you can invest in the right infrastructure, create a strong social safety net with better security, with better education, with better health, with better housing, with better city planning. And you need also to use that powerful bonanza to have a social transition and use also a great part of those resources to protect the environment. Because sometimes people try to see this kind of debates as yin and yang, black and white. So you have oil and gas or you have conservation. And it happens that there are successful cases like, for example, Canada, that is strong in oil and gas, strong in mining, but at the same time strong in conservation, is strong in forestry, and also in non-conventional renewable energies. And I think that's the bet that Guyana has taken to heart, is we have to elevate our praise for this country for rapidly and effectively using oil and gas resources to make all these transformations, and at the same time keep structural savings because they are non-renewable resources, but at the same time be a leader, having almost 90% of the territory in tropical forest, be a leader in a low carbon development strategy, be a leader in diversifying the energy matrix, and be a leader in the way conservation through a green economy and using market-driven nature-based solutions can allow you to allocate effective resources to protect the greatest richness of this country, that it's great part in the Essequibo, another part in the Damirara, and another part in Burmese. So it's really beautiful to see how this country has been able to make that effective combination.
So in your eyes, Guyana is poised to be a multifaceted success story.
I hope yes. And that's why I love this country. I want to be present in this process. I want to be helpful for the Guyanese authorities and also be able to tell investors around the world to come to Guyana, to invest in Guyana, and invest in a proper way. When you're in a country that it's able to have 90% of its territory in forest, where you're able to see that there's a low carbon development strategy, when you're able to see that it's going to duplicate the protected areas in the course of the next year, it means that a dollar invested here is a greener dollar that may be invested somewhere else. And if we put into competitiveness, conservation, with the energy transformation and the economic transformation and the generation of jobs out of this boom, but doing it in a responsible way, I just believe the story of Guyana should be one of the most important stories. I wrote a piece this year saying that Guyana was the strongest laboratory of development in the Western Hemisphere. And it is. And that's why we all have to contribute to make this a success story.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. It's been certainly a delight having you on our program. To our audience, members of our audience, thank you as well for joining us. It has been a pleasure sharing these valuable insights with you as well. Please be sure to join us next week, same time, same place, as we bring you more insights from thought leaders here and around the world. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Guyana Energy Perspectives podcast. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast.